the studio, everybody. I'm Mrs. Lapka, and this is part 2 in our series on cave art. So yesterday we talked about the early humans and some of the first art ever made on Earth, which was created by cavemen on caves. We started our artwork by using our brown paper with torn edges and creating our own version of cave art. I created my own symbols and designs to describe my modern life. So you had two choices on this project. You could have used our inspiration pages or come up with your own caveman lifestyle related symbols and art and imagery. Or you could have decided to make your own cave art that depicted pictures and symbols and imagery of our modern life. I added lots of science and technology in mine and fun lifestyle things like pizza and bicycles. So on mine, I chose to make mine a modern representation of cave art so that 400 or 40,000 years from now, people might discover my artwork and learn about my life, just like we are able to learn about the cavemen's lives by looking at what they painted on a cave. Now today, we're gonna continue our study and we're gonna do something I'm really nervous about. I've never done it before. I'm gonna create caveman paint. Now, how do we think that the cavemen, women, and children created the colors or the paints that they used on the caves? Obviously, they couldn't go to a store. They had to make it from natural resources from the world around them. So today, you have two options. One, you could use materials you already have on hand, art materials. So I've got some chalk pastels here that I'm gonna use. And also I have some crayons that I'm gonna use. Notice that I've got all of my natural colors that remind me of this caveman art. So I'm gonna stick to the color palette or the color selection of the art that we see from this period of time in history. However, I am also going to combine that mixed media. I'm also going to combine this with things from the earth, and I'm going to try, we'll see what happens, to create some paint. So I'm going to make some dirt paint. This is some charcoal from a fire. Oh, it really smells like a fire. Do you think that the cavemen used charcoal from their fires that they were cooking with to create paint? You betcha, they absolutely did. I'm going to use sticks as my grinders, and I can grind down and make my paint. Now, cavemen also used colored rocks to create their paint. They would powder the rocks and grind them down. I don't have tools to do that, so I don't expect you to do that either, but that's important to note. So that is how they made their paint, with all sorts of natural items, and I have been foraging in my kitchen. So I found all sorts of things in my kitchen, spices and some fruits that I can grind up to see if they make paint. Now today we're making art, but we're also being scientists too, because we're gonna experiment and see what happens. Sometimes you might find an object that really makes paint, and you might have another object that you grind up and you decide, that didn't work. So today we're gonna be open-minded, we're gonna explore, we're gonna be scientists and see what makes paint and what doesn't. Are you ready? Let's do it. So today we're putting our science brains to work in the art studio, and we're going to experiment with materials that we found from nature and also maybe even from your kitchen. And I want you guys to experiment and see what sort of colors we can make. So you're gonna need some water. I've got my tea kettle here with some water, and you're gonna need some bowls. I'm using a stick to grind up and to try and make my paint because I really wanna do this caveman style. I would recommend going outside and finding things that you think might make a color of paint. So I'm gonna make mud out of this dirt. So I got this dirt from my backyard. This is from my garden, which had a lot of compost in it. So it's really nice and black. And I also have this seasoning called turmeric that I used to cook with, and it has this really beautiful color. So I hope that one turns out. So you might find different things that you can paint with. I encourage you to explore and to see what works. I'm nervous, let's see what happens. You guys, it turns out being a scientist is really hard work. And like most scientists, we try things and some things work and some things don't. So far, what I've discovered, it is way harder to make caveman paint than I thought it was gonna be. So my fruits fail. They did not work. But you know what did work really well? My turmeric worked really well. And I learned that my mud worked pretty well too. Science, folks. I picked up 2 more colors from the kitchen. Since I learned that my turmeric worked, I grabbed some chili powder and also some cayenne pepper, and I'm gonna see if I can make 2 more versions of brown. No wonder all their artwork had brown in it. You guys, I learned something so cool. Now we know why the caveman's art looks like this, because the only colors I was able to make were these orange, red, and brown colors that we see in their artwork. Now, I'm a little disappointed that my natural items that I foraged from the world around me didn't work. However, it is important to note that my seasonings or my spices that I created my paint with are actually made from plants. We discovered something, science. As if our artwork wasn't going to be spicy enough, we are gonna add one more thing. We are gonna try and make some paint out of fire. This is a big piece of charcoal from my fire pit in my backyard, and I'm gonna be like a caveman and use a rock and try and scrape some fire powder or some charcoal powder into this bowl. And I wonder if I add water, if I'll be able to make a black paint, or at least a gray one. Come on, people. It worked! Oh, I'm so excited. I made black paint. All right, guys, now that you have made your paint, you are done with step 2 on our project. For waiting for tomorrow, I would cover these with lids. If you have saran wrap or something, stick them in your fridge, and we will continue on our caveman art journey tomorrow. See you then, guys. Bye-bye.